This presentation by South Tyneside Libraries takes us back to events in South Shields in the dark days of 1939 to 45, the Second World War. I'm Dave Walker. To introduce this video presentation, here's South Tyneside Libraries Information and Education Coordinator, Hildred.
In the archives at the Central Library in South Shields, there are many photographs taken in the borough during the war, showing damage caused by enemy action. The photographs come mainly from the work of a quite remarkable lady, Amy Flagg, who became almost the established unofficial historian of the town in those times. Amy Celia Flagg, daughter of Ambrose Flagg, headmaster of Ocean Road Marine School in the 1880s, will be remembered by many as the slight lady in hat and trench coat who went quietly round the town with her camera, working from the old library building and from her family home, Chapel House in Westow Village.
Miss Flagg published 3 small booklets of photographs of the town she loved and the damage the Germans were doing to it. The books were sold locally to raise money for the Red Cross Prisoners of War Fund and for local charities. They were called after words inscribed on the seal and coat of arms of the county borough of South Shields: humanity and courage. During the Second World War, photographers were rarely on the spot when the action was taking place. Most of the pictures were taken after the all-clear had sounded and daylight had broken. Most of the bombs that fell on South Shields were dropped by German bombers that flew night raids. The black and white photographs show the craters left by the high explosive bombs and the blackened remains of shops, offices and homes burned out by incendiaries. Many of the houses and streets in these pictures are long gone, and not just through the actions of Hitler's Luftwaffe. The town has changed completely in the 60 years and more since these photographs were taken. The name Claypath Lane, for instance, still survives, but you'd be hard pushed to recognize the place where these houses were destroyed in August 1940. The purpose of this presentation isn't to give a raid-by-raid account of the war in Shields. Before long, one bombed building looks much like another, unless you have a special interest in it. The aim is to give a flavour of the time through the photographs and some notes made by Amy Flagg as she worked.
It was in January 1940, some 5 months after the outbreak of war, that enemy aircraft were first reported over South Shields. No bombs were dropped and the raiders were driven off by RAF fighters. A year later, the enemy still wasn't getting it all his own way. Here's the remains of a Heinkel bomber brought down in Beach Road in February 1941. One crewman bailed out, but his parachute became tangled in overhead wires. He hung upside down until rescued, but was very badly injured. He died shortly after admission to the Ingham Infirmary. In that same raid, one casualty was the model yacht house that stood by the lake in the South Marine Park. The roof didn't used to be as low as this. Sadly, there were fatalities in that night's raid among the police, fire and auxiliary fire services. With the flames from burning aircraft as a target, other aircraft bombed the area round the parks. Broderick Street, behind Ocean Road and Seafield Terrace, was badly damaged. An elderly couple lost their lives here. The big houses overlooking the North Marine Park fared badly too. Sea Marsh stood on the corner of Law Road and St Aidan's Road. Further up the road, Tyne View demonstrates how the substantial structures of these houses made them repairable despite the damage. The pillar box stood up pretty well too.
A raid on the town on the night of the 9th to the 10th of April 1941 caused widespread damage from Clean down through the town centre to the riverside. It was clear a major attack was being aimed at the docks and the timber yards by the river, but numbers of bombs fell off target. This is the picture at Cliveden Rise, near Clevedon Hills, the morning after the raid. In the town centre, some famous buildings were hit. The Queen's Theatre at the bottom of Mile End Road was so badly damaged it was never rebuilt. After the war, it was replaced by a concrete-built car park, which has also been demolished. The nearby railway station was badly damaged. That night, so many fires were burning, the fire service was more than fully extended. A call for mutual aid was made. Fire brigades sent units from Durham, Middlesbrough, Newcastle, Gateshead and Sunderland. With them came rescue and first aid parties. Up the line from the station, trains were parked overnight in sidings by the river. The London and North Eastern Railway were experts at getting the trains running again as soon as possible after enemy action, but I suspect they might have had trouble with this casualty. Stoodley Bridge survived the attack, and of course it stands to this day. In Pearson Street, by Arbea Roman Fort, one bomb exploded 20 feet from a surface shelter. Amazingly, nobody in the shelter was hurt, although they were probably more than a bit surprised. The main target of this raid was thought to be the industrial property along the riverside, and the shipyards didn't escape. This is Redhead's the morning after. The glass roof of the fitting shop is presumably in bits on the floor.
On the 1st of October 1941, the official statement from London read, "Enemy action over this country last night was not on a large scale, but included a fairly sharp attack on a northeast coastal town. Considerable damage was done, and there were a number of casualties, some of which were fatal. One enemy aircraft was destroyed." Miss Flagg notes, "Behind this terse statement lies a story of widespread bombing, some miraculous escapes, and many acts of individual heroism in South Shields." This is the back of the Simonside Arms, and this is what a 1,000-kilogram bomb did to it that night. Actually, the damage was only superficial. Many windows blown out in the pub and houses nearby. Happily, there were no casualties here. Imagine coming up out of the air raid shelter to find this. This bomb hit the foundations of an old house below Smith's Foundries in Commercial Road, skidded off, went through the wall of a house across the road, and ended up between the bed and a partition wall. It weighed 500 pounds. The bomb disposal squad had the job of getting it safely removed next day. That bomb in Commercial Road had a twin, and the twin did explode. It completely demolished Holy Trinity schools and burst a gas main. The windows in Holy Trinity Church were shattered, and other buildings nearby were damaged. Meanwhile, at the other end of the town, Hart and Dye Works was completely wrecked. A 1,000-kilogram bomb fell in the middle of the works, destroying all the heavy machinery. The ladies would have to get their posticks out again.
In the town centre that night, a bomb fell in Union Alley, just at the back of Crofton's store and warehouses. A cafe at the corner of the street was wiped out, and some people were trapped in the cellar. A rescue party foreman, James Thomas Scott, then aged 49, was lowered head first and succeeded in rescuing 3 people at considerable risk to himself. He was later awarded the George Medal for his gallantry. As it turned out, that bomb, though it did considerable damage and caused casualties, was to turn out to be providential. Here, we're looking from Union Alley across the marketplace towards Dean Street. That end of the alley and access to the market is completely blocked. Here's a shot looking the other way past Crofton's warehouse. That's a roll of carpet hanging down next to the lamppost. Another act of heroism that night involved a bomb that fell through the roof of the electricity power station in West Holborn. It came to rest on top of a boiler with steam at a pressure of 250 pounds per square inch, but failed to explode. Now, that's not a happy place for a live bomb to be. A corporation worker courageously went in and drew the fires in the boiler in the hope of reducing the danger. For the rest of the raid, the town was without power. In fact, the all clear at the end of the raid had to be given by police cars. The sirens had been silenced.
The bombing at Hart and Dye Works extended to nearby Ambleside Avenue. 7 people were going to the Anderson shelter in the garden when the bomb dropped. They were trapped at the foot of the stairs in their house. 2 were killed, 2 needed hospital treatment, and the remainder suffered from shock.
The Gazette caught it that night. They received a direct hit. The printing works in Barrington Street was wrecked. So were part of the offices. Fred Taylor, a reporter on fire-watching duty, in the power cut and blackness, got to the head of the office stairs and almost stepped out into the void through a gaping hole in the wall. After that shock, there was more to come. He got home to find his own house had been bombed. Fortunately, his wife was safe.
There was a lot of what might be termed indiscriminate bombing that night. Mrs. Thompson, an ARP warden, was killed in the blast that hit this house in Eastfield Road as she was on her way to the warden's post. She was the first air raid warden in South Shields to die in enemy action.
It wasn't only unexploded bombs in their bedrooms people had to contend with. This house in Raglan Street behind Legate Lane received a direct hit by a lump of railway line that had been blown from the colliery line at Chichester. You can see why people wore tin hats. Again, in High Shields, there was damage done in Cornwallis Square. A bomb fell on the railway embankment in nearby Portbury Street. This put the line between High Shields and Tyne Dock out of commission for the whole of the next day, and buses were run between the stations to cope with the traffic.
The last bombs of the night fell on Mayfair Gardens and the nearby Harton Cemetery. There were no casualties. Residents of Mayfair Gardens had taken refuge in a concrete shelter built by one of the owners, and this protected them. One bomb that fell in the cemetery blocked the roadway and caused problems in transporting casualties to the mortuary that night. During the raid that night, 18 people were killed, 51 seriously injured, and 35 slightly injured. Tired workers barely had time to rest. Essential services hadn't been restored when on the night of the 2nd of October 1941 the Luftwaffe returned. In the short space of an hour and a quarter, bombs rained down in the centre of the town, causing devastation. The first bombs fell on houses in South Taylor Street. This is an example of what blast can do. The brickwork is stripped away, and yet the glass in the window frames is intact. 4 bombs dropped in Albany Street and Marlborough Street. They fell in quick succession and caused considerable damage. A special constable on duty in Marlborough Street was killed. Despite the damage done in other parts of the town, this raid on the centre of the town has a special place in the memory of Shields men and women.
It's always been remembered as the night the market was hit. A stick of bombs dropped right across the marketplace. Explosions and fires caused tremendous damage. One bomb completely destroyed Dunn's paint store, and fires started in the highly inflammable stock, which burned uncontrollably. 2 more bombs fell in the marketplace, one on the air raid shelter in the northeast quarter of the square, the other by the shelter in the southeast, near East Street. The explosion here fractured a gas main, which burst into flame. One eyewitness of events that night told of a blue light that illuminated the whole market square. Lit the whole place up, he said, a ghostly light. Outside the Tram public house, a trolleybus fell victim to the blast and the burning gas. That earlier raid, which had blocked Union Alley, meant that people leaving the cinema, instead of heading for the market shelters, went the other way, eastward, away from the bombs. There were casualties, of course. An air raid warden died in River Drive, where he was on duty, and a messenger boy was seriously injured in the marketplace. Tommy Best was an air raid precautions messenger, just a teenager at the time. His place of duty was at Barnes Road, away south towards Tyne Dock. When he was in his 70s, Tommy recalled his memories of that night.
The night they hit the market, Thursday night, October the 2nd, 9:30 the area had started. Because I had on a Tuesday night they hit St Hildred, Costerfield town, and on the Thursday night they hit the market. And direct hit on the shelter in the market. 2 or 3 bombs hit the market shelters, and there was one. It was an oil, I remember we went down the next day, because that was too far away, that was not a jurisdiction, the market. So we went down the next morning, see 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, the old oil bombs were still burning, the market shelter. There was about 8 or 9 people killed in the shelter. You've heard rumours about so many, there wasn't. There was only about 8 or 9 people killed. What it was, there was one of the cruisers, Royal Navy cruisers, was in Middle Docks. And some of the Navy lads had been with their lasses in the marketplace. And there was 3 or 4 naval lads killed and their lasses with them in the shelter, you know. And but that was a devastating night when they hit one was Crofton's. Because we went down the next morning, it was just devastation. Smoke, oh my God.
On the Friday morning after the raid, the marketplace was in ruins. All the windows that had been left in St Hilda's Church after the previous raid had been shattered. The roof was dislodged, the stonework pitted and scarred. The old town hall had been well and truly knocked about too. In this picture, the billiard table seems to have withstood the shocks better than the plaster on the walls. That night's raid changed the shape and character of Shields Market forever. Business premises were completely gutted, and the streets were piled high with rubble. All the overhead wires for the trolleybuses were down. It was more than a week later before buses could run along King Street again. Damage in other parts of the town had been severe. In the Hyde Street and Wharton Street area, bombs demolished many houses. People were trapped in surface shelters or under debris. Fires started in the rubble, and human bucket chains were formed to extinguish the flames. On the riverside, one bomb lifted the SS Southport, weighing 570 tons, clear of her keel blocks in the Tyne Dock Engineering Company's dry dock. Fortunately, though there was much damage to property, there were no casualties here. At Brigham and Cowan's, much damage was done to property and equipment in the dockyard. A roll of heavy cable was flung by the blast onto the roof of the fitting shop. Not long before, redheads had lost their fitting shop to bomb damage. Not safe places, fitting shops in those days. The area between the town hall and what is now Western Approach attracted Luftwaffe attention on that night. An unlucky hit at a crossroads in Elizabeth Street demolished houses on all 4 corners and caused some casualties. At the town hall garage in St Hilda Street, cars and light army vans ended up in some curious positions. The expression, a total write-off, comes to mind. In Derby Street, one bomb took the gable ends of 2 public buildings. By the time this photograph was taken, work had started on the reconstruction of Derby Street baths. Immediately across the street, St Bede's School was in a sorry state. In this picture, too, workmen are busy repairing damaged drains. The playground on the flat roof of the school is clearly visible. It always used to fascinate me to walk along Derby Street and hear children's voices that seemed to come from the sky. Before the bomb damage, that parapet wall was built high so that the pupils couldn't fall off. Now we come to a part of the town that's special to me. South Eldon Street also suffered on the night the market was hit. A heavy bomb just missed the railway bridge carrying the South Shields to Newcastle and Sunderland line across the road. A crater 70 feet in diameter was made. Transport was disrupted, gas and water mains fractured, power lines brought down. In this picture, too, work is in hand with repairs. No sophisticated diggers and bulldozers then. Picks and shovels and muscle power were the tools of the day. But when weariness overtook the workers, help and refreshment was at hand in the shape of the Salvation Army canteen, serving mugs of tea and sandwiches. The poster on the railway embankment is advertising Andrew's liver salts, but I'm sure the sandwiches weren't as bad as that. Just a few doors to the right of what you see here, Elizabeth Anderson, my grandmother, and her daughter Kitty, my mother, were crouching at the bottom of the stairs with their dogs Bobs and Lady. Now Nana wasn't going to let Hitler tell her when she would leave her home. If the German pilot had released his bomb a split second earlier, I probably wouldn't be able to tell this story now. When Mother's sister Bertha cycled across from Whitley Bay the following morning to see if they were all right, she found them covered in black dust and grime, with no water to wash in, no gas, no electricity, and not a window left in the house. But they were safe, along with Bobs and Lady. Not far away, a heavy bomb fell in the lane between Lytton Street and H.S. Edward Street. Many houses were demolished, 12 were wrecked, and most of the occupants were dead when they were eventually dug out. The horror of this incident was made worse by the danger of flooding from a broken water main, which seriously hampered the work of the wardens, rescue and ambulance parties. One final, sad casualty of the raid that night fortunately didn't claim lives. It did, however, smash completely one of the icons of South Shields. The lifeboat Tyne, in its shelter at the pier head, ended up like this. A replacement had to be found when it was restored after the war.
The night the market was hit, 44 bombs fell. About 240 houses, offices and shops were either destroyed in the raid or had to be demolished later. 7 trolley and motor buses were damaged. Miss Flagg notes that one of the Cleedon buses, though burnt out in the market, was later rebuilt and did service in the borough for many years.
Actually, Dave, this picture shows Queen Street, where one of the biggest bombs of the raid fell. At the bottom of all this rubble lies the ruins of Chip Chase's tripe shop, which had remained practically unaltered since 1832, and also the rear of Moorhouse's furniture store in Mile End Road.
Yes, it had been a bad night, as they would have said at the time. 68 were killed, 117 seriously injured, 91 slightly injured. And this is the sort of beast that did the damage. In the early hours of the 16th of April, 1942, 4 bombs fell near to the big houses of Westow Village. This bomb disposal squad has carefully lifted this bomb from the grounds of Seacroft in preparation for dealing with it at a later stage. The last of the 4 bombs fell close to the rear of Chapel House, the home of Miss Flagg. Rather like the Queen Mother's comment when Buckingham Palace was bombed, "Now I can look the East End in the face," Miss Flagg said she felt a little easier about taking photographs of other bombed-out homes now she had experienced it herself. One more picture of a smiling bomb disposal squad. There's no information to tell us who these lads and this lady are, but they're clearly happy in their work, and the lady seems very resolute and determined.
On the night of the 12th of March 1943, much devastation was caused in a small area around Cadwell. Just before 9:30 in the evening, 3 high explosive bombs fell. One 250-kilogram bomb did this to the house at the corner of King George Road and Page Avenue. A 1,000-kilogram bomb made this enormous crater in Cadwell Villas. It was one of the largest ever made in the borough. Air raid shelters were found raised on the lip of the crater, completely covered in clay, but the occupants were all rescued alive. About 60 people were rendered homeless in that raid. There was only one fatality. The body of a young man was found under debris in the road near Cadwell Villas. He was not a resident of the neighbourhood.
The last raid, on which bombs were dropped in Shields, occurred on the night of the 24th of May, 1943. 4 high explosive and 4 phosphorus bombs fell in the Westow and Cadwell area. The floorboards of a downstairs flat in Stevenson Street were undamaged, although the entire house above was wrecked. Here's another example of the curious effect of blast. The china plates on the rack in the upstairs room haven't been scratched. The air raid warden's post at Westow was near to the Regent Cinema, now Mecca Bingo. Tommy Best was again on duty, half a mile away, watching the raid.
When they hit the Regent, well, PC Armstrong was killed. We were standing on the Dean Road ARP shelter, the headquarters. We were standing looking right. The airplane. The searchlights. See the airplane, 20,000 feet, 15,000, 20,000 feet. It's a little airplane in the sky there. We would have got them, searchlights coming. Planes trying to get over them. You know when he said, Tom says, let's get inside the shelter. I said, that's all, well, watch this, man, watch this, see what's happening here. Of course, with them twisting and turning, you had to jettison these bombs, hadn't you? You had to jettison the whole lot. You just let go of these bombs anyway, that's when they hit the Regent. All little silver objects coming out the plane.
On the wall of the Regent Cinema is a small bronze plaque. It reads, "Erected by the wardens of Area D to the memory of members of the Civil Defence who were killed by enemy action near this spot on the 24th of May, 1943. Deputy Head Warden, Stanley Sutton. Section Leader, James Slessor. Warden, George Bertram. And Police Constable, Joseph Armstrong."
We'll finish with the lads of the fire service in the marketplace, the morning after the night the market was hit, having a well-earned cup of tea. And a few final statistics from Miss Flagg's notes. Since the first bomb dropped on South Shields in June 1940, 156 people were killed, 211 people were seriously injured, 3,147 persons were rendered homeless, 249 alerts were sounded, 179 high explosive bombs fell, and 9,312 incendiaries.